Hi guys, and welcome back to another Time-Lapse Tuesday. As you probably noticed, a few things have changed. We're now in 4K, so the quality is going to be a little bit nicer for your eyes. I've moved the mic into shot, so it's closer to my mouth. So it's going to be nicer on your ears. Today, we're going to be looking at a black and grey rose. If you don't already follow me on Instagram, make sure to check me out, link in the description below. You'll see that I do a lot of roses on there. But today we're going to be looking at the black and grey rose from start to finish, from the stencil being on the leg, all the way through to getting the white highlights in and having the rose completed. I'm going to go through everything that I do, from technique to the inks that I use, the needles, why I'm doing certain things, and the reasons behind all the little decisions that I make along the way. So yeah, if you like my roses, you want to know how I do them, stay tuned, because we're going to jump straight into it. Move you there. So, black and grey rose. Let me get this where I want it to be. There. So, boom. So size-wise, it was pretty nice. So this is normally that sort of average size that I like to do my roses. It's good to sort of for the scale of the leaves and the way it fits the leg and everything else. So the placement for this is obviously in the sort of the meatier bit of the calf. So placement-wise, that sort of dictated the size a little bit because I really wanted to fill that panel. At the moment, I'm using a 3-round liner. This is going to be to scratch line the rose, scratch line the leaves in. So at the moment I'll be using my dark wash and then just tapped into black just to make it that little bit punchier, just so that I can really carve out all the lines and the edges of the leaves. That way when I go in and sort of blocking the color in, it's going to make me have to go that little bit darker on the edges just to hide those lines. It just means I'm going to get a real strong high contrast leaf to balance against the nice softness of the rose. So we just smashed in all of those lines on the leaves, and now we're just going to whip around all the lines, like the solid lines on the stencil. So if you checked out my how to make a stencil video, you'll see that I do solid lines and dotted lines. So the solid lines for me, I'll always grey line. So this will now be my lightest grey wash, probably tapped into water just to make it that little bit looser and a little bit lighter. So I don't want to be seeing any of these lines when I finish the tattoo, but it's going to help keep everything really nice and crisp, give you that real solid look, and it's going to take that little bit of stress away from rubbing off the stencil. Obviously all the guidelines or the dotted lines, you can still rub those off, so you've still got to be a little bit careful, but on the whole, yeah, it's going to make your tattoo that little bit extra sort of high def, less fluffy, a little bit crisper, and it's just going to make everything look really nice and solid. So now we're back into the leaves. So this is going to be me getting my black point in, so getting the darkest elements in, and then I can work backwards from those tones. So I have switched over to using the round shaders. So what I do first of all is I just bump up the outside edge, just make it that little bit thicker, so it gives me a little bit more of a buffer for when I get the mag in there to start sort of magging out and getting those nice smooth tones. So I hit all the edges up with the dark wash, moving away from that line, just hiding that line. Then I switch over to a 15 curve mag, just to start blending out and getting those tones nice and soft and getting that nice curvature of those leaves. So I work from the edge and then work my way over, leaving a nice big skin gap just to get that nice highlight in there. It's very important to leave the skin gaps because it's going to give you that nice high contrast. Like a lot of black and grey work, you're only really hitting 50% of the skin. Yeah, you need to use that skin gap to your advantage, and that way you're going to get that nice high contrast feel to it. So moving around, we're going to start hitting up the rest of the leaves. For me, I get all the leaves done first using the same techniques and the same sort of process. Keeps everything looking the same in your head. In the past, I've sort of left leaves till last. So I've done leaves at the bottom, done the rose, and then gone back to doing leaves. That little sort of section where you've spent 3 or 4 hours doing the rose and then going back to doing a different technique to get some more leaves in. Sometimes it can be a little bit frustrating process wise. So for me, I just work around and get all the leaves done, and I can just focus on the rose for the rest of the day. So primarily using darker washes. I am moving through the tones, so medium to light, just to smooth everything out. But primarily it's almost sort of whip shading, so sort of hitting it in dark and then moving faster and looser just to smooth out those tones. For me, it's always a case of making sure that you're always blending out. You don't want to be, especially with black and grey, packing everything in tone wise, because what that's going to do is just going to give you like lines through all your black and grey, so you're not going to get that nice smooth black and grey feel to it. So always be shading out unless you've got a harsh shadow that you know you're going to be hitting that line, and then obviously you can block that in. But for the majority of the time, for me, it's a case of always be magging out, keeping everything nice and smooth and fluffy, and just getting that nice sort of soft blended tones, because you're looking for that nice sort of airbrushy feel, but sort of leaning more towards realism. So at this point, I've got all my leaves in, had a little stretch, and then we jump back into the rose. For me, I always find that's a good time to have a little break, just because you've got like the heavy bits done, and then you're just focusing on that rose, and you can just power through and get the rose done in one go without having to break halfway through. For me, I try to keep all my breaks quite strategic, just to make my life that little bit easier from the tattoo process. So with the rose, the first thing that I do is I find one of my darkest, heavier shadows. So roses are pretty great because you can normally find one towards the bottom, just because of the way the light's falling. So I've blocked in some of these heavier tones. So this will be dark wash, then just tapped into the black just to give it that little bit more of a punchy tone. Make sure it's really nice and solid. We don't want anything to be dropping out and going really light. We want everything to stay nice and crisp. So just focus on getting all these shadows in, making sure that we're keeping sort of our focus on where the light source is. For me, everything's sort of coming from sort of top left down to the bottom right. So just making sure that all my shadows are all falling in the same direction. So primarily I'm using I'm going to be using a 15 curve mag for most of this. And then I'll probably, oh no, tell a lie, that is a 27 curve mag. And then I'll be moving down to a 15 curve mag for some of the tighter bits, and then go back to using the 9 round shader just to get some of the tighter bits in the middle. Because of the size of this rose, I've just bumped up to the 27. Normally it is a 15, but it all just depends on the size of the piece. You know, it's just very similar to painting a wall. If you've got to sort of wall up a big section, use a bigger brush. If you've got to go into little tighter sections, use a tighter brush. So the main tones that I use a lot when doing these roses are like my dark and mediums. That's going to get a lot of the structure in there, got a lot of the heavy shadows in. Making sure that I'm using a lot of skin gaps, again, just to get that contrast nice and high, and then using my light wash just to smooth out and clear any mag marks from the surface of the skin. So yeah, you want to be using sort of the darker tones and try not to cause any over traumatize the skin. You know, you can build up a light tone and get it pretty dark, but you're just going to be tuning up that skin and it's just not going to heal great. So get those dark tones in first, and then just use your lighter tones to just to do all the smoothing out work. Voltage wise, I use like 8.5, 9 volts. I'm using a Bishop 1 shader. I've been using this since pretty much the launch date. Love the machine. It's super nice for black and grey, and I also find it really nice for color packing. The way that I do color, it sort of works well for me. I work from a sort of black and grey artist sort of thought process, so maybe that's why it works so well for me. So we're starting sort of from the bottom, getting the bigger petals in. For me, I tend to get all my bigger outside petals done first, sort of spiral my way in, and then finish with the little tight section. Just banging in a little bit of background. So this will be dark wash, just blend it out into medium, and then light again, just to smooth out those tones. There was existing work on the front, so we are blending a little bit of the background in and around that. But mainly this is just to get a few little dynamic shadows in there, just to sort of lift the rose off the leg a little bit, make it look a little bit less flat. So we're not going wild and just colouring loads of background in. It's just as and where it needs it, just to hold some tones, just to give it that nice look. So now we're moving into some of the slightly tighter sections. I'm still using the 27, I think. It'll be changing shortly to the 15, but at the moment it's still the 27. I am skipping over a few petals, so some of the ones that are used that are getting some of the biggest highlights in there, I will be jumping over the top of those, and then I'll come back and just give them a little tickle with some medium and light, just to give them that curvature. But the bulk of it, I'm just going to be looking at missing those, just so I can get those real nice high contrast sort of elements in there, and just mainly focusing on the shadows. So at this point, I think it was getting a little bit sore, so we banged on a little bit of Bactine, had a little bit of a stretch, just try and take the edge off a little bit. So Bactine does one of two things. One, it's going to help your clients sit that little bit longer, take away a little bit of the soreness and the irritation for them, but it's going to help you out as an artist. It's going to help take a bit of the redness out, especially with black and grey. Just means that you're going to be able to see your tone, see exactly what you've put in there, see any bits that need nipping over, and just darken up a little bit. So now we're back into it. So now we're getting into like the tighter, more complicated bit. So this will be with a 15 curve mag now. So just reducing down that size of that mag, just so we can get in there and really smooth out those tones. So again, focusing on the shadows and where they're coming from. So hitting up the shadows first and then moving into the lighter tones. So again, the beauty of scratch lining it, you can see how light my scratch lines are at the top there. I've got 2 petals. Well, I've rubbed off all of my stencil now, so that's completely gone. But the fact I've got those scratch lines in just means that I've got that ability to work the way that I work without worrying too much about my stencil disappearing, and it means I can give my clients plenty of breaks, and it means I can work exactly where I need to work. So I can jump around, get all my shadows in first, and then move into the midtones and lights, and just get everything as close to the image as I possibly can. Obviously, if I just worked straight from a stencil, I would have to work from the bottom and get to the top, and sometimes that's not the greatest thing to do when trying to do realism, especially with black and grey. So just blocking a load of stuff in, using a lot of mid-tones just to smooth everything out. Get a bit of background at the top there, so where the petals didn't have anything on, that's where I've just put on a bit of background just to hold those edges, and just to keep that nice sort of dynamic highlight on the top. I've been putting some big white highlights across the top, just to make them really punchy. But again, just putting background where it needs it, not just nailing the whole thing with background. So if there's anything that gets added to this sort of piece later on, it gives us the ability to slot things in, and we're not having to fight with a load of background. So now moving into the really complicated bit in the middle. A lot of people don't like doing this bit just because it is very, very tight and fiddly, but if you use the right sort of mags, so again, this is a 15 curve mag now, and for the really, really tight middle bits, I'll just punch in there with either a liner or a nice tight round shader, just to carve out sort of the tightest bits in there. The main thing really is just to get good rose reference. If you get something that's really, really complicated in the middle, you're either gonna have to simplify it or choose a different reference that isn't so complicated. Again, now I'm in with a 9 round shader just to block out and carve some of these edges. So I tend to do this a lot. So just before I do the white highlights, I'll go around with the 9 round shader with a dark wash and just hit some of the edges that really need a little bit of extra punch in there. So I can just go in and just block out some of the edges, just get them really nice and punchy. So I've just drawn on with some skin surfers, just a couple of water droplets. There was a tutorial on one of my previous videos, so if you go through and find those, you'll see exactly how I do my water droplets. Super straightforward. They're basically little smiley faces. These are actually one-eyed smiley faces because I've only got the one highlight on the top, but just block them in, and just gives everything a little bit of a nicer feel, makes it look a little bit more pretty. So just going back through with a 15 curve mag just to soften off any edges, any lines that are peeping through from the scratch lines, just to hide those, make everything look a little bit more realistic. Now that everything's settled down, I can just go back through with a mid-tone just to soften off anything, make sure that all my mag marks are as minimal as possible. A lot of it will heal out, but we want to make sure everything's looking nice and smooth. So just going through with the white, I tend to start from the middle bit. That's where I put a lot of my white just to give all my edges that real nice crisp look. So really pounding those lines in. There's no point putting white in if you're not going to be able to see it. You need to make sure that everything is super punched in, super solid. You don't want to just be doing something that's going to heal out and just put your client through a bit of pain for the sake of it. So, you know, do everything with a purpose. Make sure it's going to stand the test of time. So just pounding through these whites, hitting most of my edges. I'm mainly hitting any edge that's going to have a highlight or anything that's got reflective light to it. But mainly it's just to keep everything nice and crisp. So once everything heals, it's going to give you that slight little bit of separation by putting that pigment in the skin. It's going to stop anything from blurring together. So putting a few little reflective highlights on the outside of the edges. So these are on technically part of the background, not on the rose. It's just going to give you, again, just boost up that contrast, give you that nice sort of high dynamic look, and just lift the rose off the leg and give you that real nice 3D look. Popping some white into the water droplet, and you can see straight away how much more dynamic that white makes it look with that extra boost of contrast. You should be able to get away with putting no white in a tattoo. That's the way I've always looked at black and grey. You shouldn't need to put white in. White should just help to add to the piece. So we're not a million miles off being done now. So last few little white highlights, and then we'll give it a big wipe down, and then we'll be ready to have a look and start taking some photos. So just add in a few extra little bits on this left-hand side. I normally get to a point where once I get to the outside edges, I'm pretty much done. And that was a black and grey rose. So there you go, guys. That was a black and grey rose from start to finish. That's exactly how I do every rose, whether it be color or black and grey. Exactly the same techniques in the way that I approach it. Step by step. I'm very methodical when I do my roses, mainly just because I've done so many of them. So I'll do the same thing every time. I'll basically line them with scratch lines, do my leaves first, and then move into the rose. Hopefully you've taken something interesting from this. If you have, make sure to like the video. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure to click the subscription button. Click the little bell icon, which will get you notified of all my latest videos and updates. Make sure to check me out on Instagram for all of my other color roses. And with all that being said, I will see you all on the next video. Peace.